All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. Were the Niners actually going to get Tom Brady? We'll talk about it next. This offseason, was Tom Brady coming to the Niners? Unbelievable. We'll hit that next. But first, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. And, of course, this video is brought to you by Mojo Fantasy. Check the link in the description. Use the promo code KRUG, KRUEG, and they will match you up to your first $100. Well, rumors have it, JPA Football on Twitter says the 49ers tried getting Tom Brady out of retirement to be their starter this season. They even told Brock Purdy that he would be the backup for the year if they got Tom Brady. This is according to an ESPN report. Early in the offseason, Niners coach Kyle Shanahan sat down with Purdy and assured him that if he was healthy, he would be the starter unless Tom Brady wanted to play one more season for his hometown 49ers. So this is definitely interesting. This, of course, comes back to a story that was written about Tom Brady potentially coming to the 49ers. And this was a story that ESPN, if you read it, Nick Wagner had this, ESPN writer, and on ESPN.com. And the 49ers were considering Tom Brady. And, the Niners obviously passed on Brady, and that was clearly a mistake. In fact, I'll share the screen right here, and you guys can see the tweet that I'm talking about. Here it is from JPA Football. And there it is right there. Tom Brady with the Niner logo, wearing this Buccaneers jersey. And they're referring to the story written by Nick Wagner on ESPN.com. It is interesting to think of what could have been would the Niners have gone with Tom Brady. Well, think about it. The Niners lost the NFC Championship last year. They clearly did not believe that Trey Lance could do the job this year. They made that call early on. That's why when John Lynch came out at the combine and said, Trey needs to play, and then he paused and said, and we've got a team that's ready to win, and, made it seem like that was a problem. So they made the evaluation well before this offseason that Trey Lance wasn't going to be their guy, or at least no longer fit their timeline. And so they were moving on from Trey Lance. So anybody who said, by the way, in February or March, hey, you know what, they're moving on from Trey Lance and they're committing to Brock Purdy, well, you had it half right. That's what I was going with in March. I read it right that they were moving on from Trey Lance, but were they moving on to Brock Purdy? Well, they didn't know what Brock Purdy was going to be. They didn't know what Brock Purdy was going to be this year. They knew they liked Brock Purdy, and they knew that he was their future. But they didn't know if he could come back from the terrible elbow surgery that he had in the offseason. So Tom Brady was an option that they wanted and an option they wanted to pursue, and it totally fit. If you knew you had a quarterback on a rookie deal that was going to make $830,000 or $845,000 this year, then this was the year to potentially give Tom Brady that opportunity. The Niners obviously, missed on Tom Brady coming out of Michigan. They took Gio Carmazzi and Tim Rattay in a draft that had Tom Brady. They had Tom Brady work out in front of Bill Walsh, Terry Donahue, Steve Mariucci, Greg Knapp, the late Greg Knapp. Tom Brady showed up at the 49ers local pro day workout 3 days before the draft, but they were looking for the next Steve Young. They were looking for mobility. They were looking for somebody who could run around. And so they were enamored with the traits of Gio Carmazzi. And so they went with Carmazzi. They never really seriously considered Brady. That's the truth. And then Tom Brady goes on and has this Hall of Fame career, and becomes the greatest quarterback of all time and the most successful Super Bowl quarterback in the history of the sport. And then they considered going with Tom Brady after the 49ers lost to the Chiefs in Miami in the Super Bowl. But at that point, you know what? Jimmy G's a lot younger. Jimmy G's the leader. You just won an NFC championship with Jimmy G. Tom Brady was like 43 at the time, and Jimmy G was like 28. You're really going to get rid of 28-year-old Jimmy G, who you just went to the Super Bowl with, for Tom Brady? So the Niners didn't have the conviction that Brady would keep it going in his 40s to as long as he did. And you can't blame him necessarily, because what Brady did longevity-wise was somewhat unprecedented. So they just chose the 28-year-old Jimmy Garoppolo over Tom Brady, and then watch Tom Brady go win another Super Bowl with Tampa and Jimmy fall short. And now, and deep down, they knew. John Lynch knew. Kyle Shanahan knew. They blew it. They blew it. They didn't blow it with Brady coming out. That was Walsh and Donahue and Mooch and the Niners brass back then that blew that. But they had an opportunity to go with Tom Brady over Jimmy Garoppolo, and they whiffed. They missed. And I'm sure they thought about it a lot. So here was the offseason this year. They had Trey Lance on a rookie deal, but it was going up in price. They had, Brock Purdy. They liked what they saw from Brock Purdy, but he had his elbow ripped out by Hassan Reddick, and who knew exactly if he would return? Some people thought he would return by training camp. Other people thought he wouldn't return until week 8. So they had interest in Tom Brady as a stopgap guy for 1 year, but Brady didn't want to do it. Brady wanted to call it quits, and so and then of course Brock Purdy gets healthy, and by August they're trading Trey Lance away for a future 4th-round pick to the Dallas Cowboys. So interesting story by Nick Wagner, and Tom Brady and the 49ers just never connected. They should have been all over him in the draft, but weren't. And then watched him have a Hall of Fame career. They should have had the conviction that Jimmy, after having to run the ball against Minnesota and Green Bay in the lead up to the Super Bowl, had real limits. And they should have said, you know what? We're going with Tom Brady. But they looked at the Tom Brady age and said, well, we're going to go with 41, 42-year-old Tom Brady over 28, 29 Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe Brady's done. They didn't realize Brady had one more great year in him. So they passed on Brady. And clearly they had reservations after watching him win the Super Bowl in Tampa. And then here comes Brock, and Brock was there, but they didn't want to give away this year. They wanted to go with a rookie quarterback or a quarterback on a rookie deal and build around that, which is why they even went after Trey and then after Brock. But then they know their window for winning a Super Bowl was closing, and they knew they couldn't give away this year. And I'm sure Jed probably said to them at the end of last year, hey, guys, no offense, but we can't keep blaming the quarterback for why we're falling short. The quarterback, maybe, who knows, maybe Jed went to John and Kyle and said, the quarterback, will not be an excuse for why we don't win it all this year. So get whatever quarterback you feel like you need to win with, get him. And for that, and I think that conversation probably happened. If you don't think Trey's the guy, fine. If you think Brock's the guy, fine. You invested a bunch in Trey Lance, but if you want to trade off a Trey, I'm fine with that. Heck, Jed just gave John and Kyle contract extensions. So he's committed to them. He basically said to Kyle and John, I believe in you guys. Even though you wanted Trey Lance and traded a bunch of picks and assets to get Trey Lance, and even though Trey Lance, you're now telling me, isn't the guy, I'm still going to give you an extension because you got Brock Purdy. But the quarterback can't be an excuse this year. So I think for that reason, they said, you know what? If Tom Brady's willing to come out of retirement and play football this year, we will take him this year. But I don't think Tom was wanting to do it. I think he wanted to stay retired. And ultimately, Purdy got healthy in time. and the 49ers had a really good season, and now they're one win away from a berth in the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. We'll see if they can get it done Sunday at home against the Detroit Lions. But interesting. I believe the rumor wholeheartedly. The Niners wanted Tom Brady this year for one more year. They would have gone with Tom Brady if Brady wanted to be here, and they could have worked it out. Instead, Brady stayed retired. Purdy got healthy. Lance got moved to Dallas, and the Niners are one win away from the Super Bowl. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Mojo Fantasy for sponsoring this video. Thanks to all you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.